What's up, YouTube? All right, here we are. Here's another week at the Home Theater Hobbyist, and we're doing another basic series. And this week we're doing our basics on the AV receiver, or the audio video receiver. All right, let's get into it. Okay, so this is your AV receiver, and this is the hub of basically your home entertainment system. Because what it does is it transfers and processes the video and audio from one of your source components, like your Blu-ray player, your cable box, your game controller, or your game system, and it passes the audio onto the speakers, specifically if you have separate speakers like a 5.1 or 7.1, 7.2, 7.4 system. And if you don't know what those terms mean, please go to our Home Theater Basics audio video, and we actually explain that. And it passes the video signal on through your television, and all of a sudden you have a surround sound system. So that's what it does. It literally transfers all your audio and video where it needs to go. And it does so using the different surround sound modes and different things like that. So it should at least decode DTS, HD Master Audio, Dolby True HD, and if you want, you can also get the ones that do Dolby Atmos, DTS X, Oro 3D for adding the high channels that we talked about in the audio video. So this is the home theater receiver. We're going to move on, and we're going to start talking about what you see in the front, what you see in the rear, and try to help you feel a little bit more comfortable with hooking these things up. So let's get to that. Okay, so let's talk about the receiver parts. And this is a Yamaha receiver, but this is going to be true for most of your receivers. You're going to have your main power button, your volume button, an input selector, maybe a program menu here, maybe an input for HDMI, USB, and video if you have an older receiver. Some of these are getting rid of some of the component video receivers, and some other preset information, AM, FM radio, and all those types of things. But the one thing we really want to talk about here, also there's a headphone jack if you actually want to do what Yamaha calls silent cinema. So if you're in your house and you have small kids and you're watching at night, you can put on headphones and listen that way. The thing we want to talk about here is the YPOW input mic, which is a mic, and what this mic does, and this is my mic from my receiver here, what this mic does is you plug it in. When you plug it in, the receiver instantly switches to a channel, and you're able to put this on a tripod through this little screw, or just any normal, I think 3/8 inch tripod, and you put it in your main listening position. And what that does is it figures out the distance between where you sit and all of your speakers, and it calibrates it and kind of tries to put the levels right, and also make sure that your speakers are connected correctly. So that's very important. A lot of people say, oh, I don't really use that, but it's good to use it so that you're able to make sure that your speakers are at least plugged in correctly. And so anytime I unplug them, like I just did here, I'm going to plug it back in and run that really quickly just to make sure everything's plugged in correctly. Okay, so that's the basics of the front of the receiver. Okay, here we are looking at the rear of my receiver, and most receivers are going to have this. I know not every receiver is going to have it, but this is for my receiver. We've got a 5-volt in, or this is for USB. You got your network cable. You've got your component video in. You've got your other video sources in, like your just regular RCA cables in, and audio. And then you've got those same audio out, and then you've got your AM, FM antenna stuff, some more component video out. If you've got an older TV you want to hook in to this particular receiver, you've got some preamp outs, subwoofers, and all your speaker connections. You've got your front, right, left, center, surround left, right, and your surround backs, and you also have an extra zone. So a lot of 7-channel receivers, if you don't have 7 channels, they'll do an extra zone so you can hook it up and you can have a zone or something in a different room. Now, the other thing we want to talk about here is HDMI out. This goes to your television from the receiver. Some should have at least one, but some have 2, so you can do maybe one from a television and then the other to a projector or to another room. And we have 5 HDMI inputs. Now, we recommend at least 5 HDMI inputs because you can have a Blu-ray player, streaming player, like an Apple TV, something like that, your PlayStation game console, Xbox, whatever it may be, and a cable box, and that takes up 4 inputs. So we recommend 5 just so you have a little bit more versatility, just in case you get a PlayStation and an Xbox, you want to hook everything up. or 5 or more is what we recommend. And also when you're looking at those HDMI inputs, you want to make sure that you, at least one or a few of them, as many as possible, support the newest formats, HDMI 2.2, or excuse me, HDMI 2.0, HDCP 2.2, 4K pass-through, UHD, all of those things. You want to make sure that you have everything that you need in your inputs, that it supports it in your inputs and in your outputs, that you're actually able to output those signals from your box. So that is the rear of the system. So now let's go through how you would hook things up just really quickly. Okay, so here we are. We're at the rear of the system and we're ready to set things up. And this is where most people get a little bit nervous. And the main reason is because they see all of these inputs and they don't know what to do with them. But it's actually pretty quick and pretty easy. Most of your speakers, are pretty much all speaker manufacturers as far as I know, they show you the red and the black, and then you just match black and red. That's all you have to do. And when you're doing that, you want to use speaker wire, and your speaker wire, we would say use at least 16 gauge, maybe even 12 gauge, which is actually a little bit thicker speaker wire. And also we would say get yourself a pair of banana plugs. These things make it a lot easier to hook up a surround sound setup. So on this wire, I've already got the banana plug set up. So all I'd have to do, plug in black with black, red with red, and on the other end of the cable, same thing, red with red, black with black. The good thing about a lot of cables is on one side of the cable, they'll usually, I don't know if you can really see it here, they'll usually put like the name of the cable or who it's made by on one side, and I usually use that as my positive. You can use it as your negative or your red or your black, and that becomes your red. In my case, it's my red, my positive, and then you just hook it in. And tighten it down, and there you go. It's all done. And so from that point, you've got power to your speakers, and your AV receiver handles the power. And then let's say you've got a source device like this little Amazon Fire TV box, HDMI. That's one of the beautiful things about HDMI is HDMI is so simple. It's just one cable, plug into the back of there, and then let's say you wanted to put that on HDMI 1, and there you go. And then if you had a television, which we have our TV here, and it doesn't actually have any HDMI inputs on it, but it does have these old RCA type inputs. So you could go yellow with yellow, white with white, and red with red, like that. And then since this would be output, AV out, you would do the same thing over here. And that's that. So all of a sudden you'd be able to connect audio and video. Some people like to talk about power output and what that means, and that's important. That's very important. They want to do things at reference level, and what reference level is the sound that the studio engineers actually were listening to when they mastered the content. And for a lot of receivers, that is known as 0 dB on the actual receiver. But personally, I find that to be a little too loud. So I don't know. I don't ever listen at reference level. But power output is very important when you want to listen at reference level, because you want to make sure that your receiver is not distorting the sound, because it can't handle that, putting that amount of power to all your speakers. And you also don't want it to be clipping or cutting out some of the sounds that you need to be hearing at that level. So that's why power output is important. But if you're not planning to do that, then, or not planning to listen at that level, then it's not as important. Most of your AV receivers today can handle what most people would put at them at an 8 ohm load. Okay, so now that you've actually seen how you hook things up and you've seen the front and the rear, that's the big basics on your AV receiver. And we thank you guys for watching. Please add things to the comments below. We like reading your comments. If you have comments on the preprocessor, the amplifier, please add those. Let's have a discussion. I love talking about it. I love seeing you guys interact with one another. Please do that, like or subscribe below, and we'll see you next week.